Oh, negative. Young. Good vintage. Please forgive me. I just needed a little sustenance. And here we are back for some more recommendations. What's on the list for today? Vampire reads, of course. Hey guys, if you're new here, welcome to The Book Path. I'm Nicole, and if this isn't your first rodeo, thanks for sticking around and welcome back. Up for today's spooky recommendations, we are dealing with vampire books. These are the books, once again, like my Witchy Reads one, which I will link down below. The vampires feature as the main characters in these books, and that's kind of the theme of the book, so that's what makes them standalones as vampiric reads. So we're going to go ahead and start with some of the books that I don't have here, but I've had them in ebook or I've read them and returned them. And first up, of course, is the classic Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. For any vampire aficionado, this is kind of like the holy grail for vampires. It's a classic. It came out a long time ago. It's had movies. It's a whole series. And it basically tells the story of Lestat, who is telling how he turns into a vampire and just how he came to be from the old, 1800s Louisiana bayou to modern day. And he's giving this story to an interviewer, and it's got obviously drama, intrigue, and I'm sure you guys have seen the movies. Anyways, Interview with the Vampire is the first in Anne Rice's vampire series. Many more happen, and you have Louis' side, Lestat's side, Armand. It just goes on and on and on and on. I read this one a little bit a while ago. It wasn't my favorite read. I definitely think that it was incredible for the time that it was written in, because nothing else had really been written like that for a while. And it's kind of like inspired so many more vampire stories to come afterwards. Very grim, very dark, very kind of gory. So just be aware of that. But just kind of, it doesn't really have a lot of feelings. There are emotions, but it's a lot of just like his story. And if you remember anything about this world, the vampires kind of lack emotion. And so that's kind of the rooting of this, but a very good story. I wanted to read the story for years after seeing the movie, knowing that my parents had read the books, and it was, Anne Rice's vampires are like critically acclaimed. I still have some of the more books in this series I haven't read yet. I don't know if I'm going to get to them or not, but I keep them around just in case I have to read like a vampire book and I don't have anything at that moment. So I do keep them around, but I do recommend it because it is kind of like canon for vampire fans. Next up, we have Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This is part of duology trilogy, if you count the Six Scorched Roses. I recently read both those two. I have yet to read the third and final book. It is on my list that I really need. I really would love to get done by the end of the year. But alas, this is a world in which different factions of vampires exist. And you have a young woman who, she's growing up in this world. She's human, but she's been raised by the current vampire king. And there's a competition that happens, and whoever wins the competition is supposed to be able to ask the dark goddess, if you will, for a wish. And so her wish is to basically become vampire, or basically have the strength and power to protect herself so she can continue to exist amongst the vampires on her own. Unbeknownst to her, there are some other vampires who would like to get their wish fulfilled, because there is a battle for the king of the vampires, basically. And there's some rebellion, and while she is participating in this competition, she comes across another competitor who is a vampire, and they decide to kind of team up over the competition until the end, so that they can protect one another until the end. There is kind of an enemies to lovers with a super twist ending. The book does end on a cliffhanger, so I am super excited to get to the next one and see where their story goes and continues. But it was a 5-star for me. I loved it, and I know so many other people have loved it. So highly recommend as a vampire pick to pick up. Next, we have probably one of the longest series I have known outside of like maybe Goosebumps or The Babysitter's Club or something like that. And that is A Shade of Vampire by Bella Forrest. This is part of her vampire series. A Shade of Vampire is the first book in it. I think there's like 90 something books in this series. It's a long one, and they're very hard to find. So I'm going to be trying to continue looking for them because once again, this was a 5-star for me. I read this book years ago, and then I picked it up again a few months ago just to see if it was still worth it to continue looking for the rest of the series, because I knew it was such a long series, and it absolutely is. You have a young girl who has a lot of trauma in her life. Her mother passed away when she was younger. She lives with like a friend's family. She has a crush on one of the boys that's the son of the family. And during a trip to like Cancun or somewhere around there, she's trying to get up the courage to confess to him. Stuff goes awry, and she finds herself kidnapped by vampires and brought to a vampire island to be part of a harem for the basic vampire king that's there. The vampire king, though, he doesn't really want to partake in a harem. He doesn't really want to use humans as slaves. So they kind of butt heads, and he kind of protects her, and there is a love story that, comes to a point. All the while, she is trying to escape this island, and she does exactly what you are expecting her to do. Like if she sees a knife on a counter, she's going to grab it. If she's, told don't fight back, she's going to fight back. She's going to try to make an escape. She does everything that you as the reader are like, well, I would do this. She does it. So it was part of the reason why I loved it. It was a very, very quick read. Highly recommend it. It's really well done. And the relationship that starts to blossom between the two main characters, the vampire king and the young girl, is really good, and I want to see where they go from that, because there's kind of a severance of stuff that happens at the end of the first book. So it was really well done, and I want to find the rest of the books. I'm in for the long haul. We'll see how it goes. Last for the ebook picks is Blood Orange by Karina Hale. This was one that I read a few months ago, and for a good portion of the book, I thought it was going to be about a 3, maybe a 4-star, because it just kind of was what it was. It started picking up very spicy scenes. I will say very spicy scenes. So be forewarned, taboo spicy scenes or on the border there. Twist ending. I could not believe that it happened. Could not believe that it happened. It was one of those ones where you got to the end and I was like pacing back and forth because I was like, I just couldn't believe that the book ended that way. It is part of, I think, a series or duology. I do want to pick up the next book because now I have to know what happens. You do that to me, that little twist, shot it right up to, I believe it was a 5-star after that, because it was just once it started getting to the climax and building, and then those final scenes, and then what kind of happened after those final scenes, almost like an afterword, if you want to think about it. Very well done. I salute you. So yeah, it was a good read and I highly recommend it. So that being said, now we get to go on to our physical books. And of course, we have Belmorte by Bella Higgins. Belmorte was interesting because you basically have these houses where vampires live, like rock stars, like celebrities, and humans audition for roles to be their blood donors. What happens is the main character, I cannot remember her name, her sister takes part and applies to be one of the donors. She gets accepted. She goes to the house, and you're supposed to have like a 1 or 2 year lease there, and then either they can choose to keep you or, you get paid a really great amount of money to go on with your life. And her sister never comes home, and she knows something happens. So she goes and applies. She gets accepted into the same house that her sister was in, and she sets about to try to figure out what happened to her sister. All the while, she runs into Edmond Dantes. once I heard that name, I lost it. I was like, do they know that that's the character from the Count of Monte Cristo? Yes, they do. They make reference to it because apparently he is supposed to be the inspiration for the character. So it was funny and played on that. It did leave on a cliffhanger. I can't remember. I don't know if the sequel is already out or if it's coming out soon. But it was an interesting read. Light spice, but you know, it kind of was fun because it's like a celebrity lifestyle. There's cameras there at certain things during certain events, and all the while she's trying to do a little espionage and fall in love at the same time. Next up, we have Of Shadow and Moonlight by Luna Laurier. This was one that I had pre-ordered. It was really interesting because you have a young woman who she has a terminal disease, and she comes across like these kind of nightmarish creatures, and then she's saved by none other than a vampire, and the vampire brings her to his house, and he's kind of keeping her there to protect her. She keeps her illness a secret, and all the while her and this vampire are falling in love. There is more than meets the eye, and he knows more about her than she may let on, or that she may even know about herself. What I loved about this book was not only did it have a beautiful cover, it also has a playlist. You can scan the QR code down here and you get the playlist for the book. And it also had some very fun, I'm trying to see if I can find them because there were illustrations in the book as well. So it was a lot of fun to read this because it wasn't exactly a manga, but you did have really great, you know, illustrations, you know. And this is the first book in the series, so I'm curious to see what the next ones are going to happen because there is some stuff that comes along in the way. Some secrets are revealed, and epic battles, I think, you know, between like not necessarily light and darkness, but between those who are trying to protect people and those who could kind of be the darker forces in this, if you will. But very interesting in the way it was done, and there will be more. Next up, we have The King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. I know that they have the second book out, which I think is The Queen of Myth and Monsters. Not my favorite Scarlett St. Clair book. I am more of a fan of her Hades and Persephone story, but very interesting, very spicy, very spicy. Basically, you have Isolde, who is the princess in a kingdom. She is a curvy girl with some badassery to her. Her mother has been killed. Her father is kind of very worrisome about her, and in walks the this kind of I don't want to call him like he's kind of a conquering king, if you will. And that is Adrian, and he is a vampire, and there's all this stuff that Isolde has been led to believe about the vampires, their community, what they're setting out to do, their ruthlessness, and lo and behold, in a way to save her kingdom from being taken over, Isolde agrees to marry Adrian and go back to his kingdom and rule beside him. Not all is as it seems. There is more to Isolde's past or past lives that meet the eye, as well as her relationship to Adrian. There are some curses that may or may not have come to fruition because Isolde does have some witchy powers. Very kind of dark world that they go into. Lots of battles, bloodbath, and once again, lots of spice. But it didn't grab me the way that other books had that she's written. But that being said, it was a very interesting world, and I look forward to reading more and seeing if Queen of Myth and Monsters can like kind of bring it full circle for me. But I did want to put it up here because it is a vampire book. I have read it, and I know that there are a lot of people that really do love this book in this series. Next up is The Court of the Vampire Queen by Katie Robert. This was I think this is a bind up of these books that were recently released. It was like a trilogy, and they were all released separately, and they decided to do a bind up. So I ended up getting this. So this is, I think, all 3 books. This, I will say, very little plot, a lot of smut. So if you are looking for a book like that, this is your gem, because you have a damper, but she's half human, half vampire. And she basically is given by her father, who's kind of like the emperor, if you will, like a high king or something, and he's ruling. She is given as a gift or sacrifice to one of these other powerful vampiric houses, to whatever pleasure or displeasure of the lord that lives there. And you find out that the lord is under a curse and he cannot leave the house. And so she sets forth with the lord and 2 of his friends, who are also vampires, to try to break this curse and also try to plot a rebellion and kill her father, all the while biting each other, feeding from each other, and sleeping with each other in various ways. That is basically all I can say on this book. Not one of my more favored Katie Roberts books, but I will say, if you're looking for an ultimate spicy vampire read with all sorts of spice in it, then this is going to be the vampire book for you. And no list is going to be complete without recommending my favorite of all time, probably, and that is Jennifer L. Armen Chout's From Blood and Ash series, as well as the Shadow and Ember series, because they all both exist in the same world. You have vampires who kind of rule over the humans. Not all is what it seems. In this book, you have the story of Poppy and Castile. And Poppy is the maiden who, she doesn't know if her role is to ascend and become a vampire, or if she is supposed to be a sacrifice for others to become a vampire. All has not been revealed, but she lives a life of solitude and quiet. And then you have Hawk, who comes into her life as her bodyguard, and she starts having some flirty little chances with him, as well as seeing possibly a little bit of truth in what she couldn't believe before about what the vampire's purpose really is in this world. They are taught to fear the Atlantean race, which is, I want to say, for lack of a better term, a different vampire race, or a higher vampire race, if you will. And all is not as it seems. There are many who are not as they seem. And Poppy has to navigate this world to find out where she stands and how to possibly even save her own life. Then you have the Shadow and Ember series, which is basically the same world, but I think it's like 500 years before. And this is the story over the god of death, and kind of his lady love, who is, I want to say human, but she might not be, because once again, JLA can write some characters with some secrets unbeknownst to even those characters themselves. But in this, you have a lot more of the, I don't know if they're the Atlanteans or if they're the people that are above the Atlanteans, but they're basically the deities, but they also have vampiric qualities. So that's why I'm including these books in the list. Both very good reads, very good reads. Highly recommend. These would be the 2, for nothing else, read these ones. But these are my favorites series, and they are still going on. So with that being said, those are my vampire picks. I know there are many other vampire books that I did not have on this list. If they are not on this list and you would like to recommend them, please do so in the comments down below. I would be more than happy to add more books to my vampire list. Hey guys, as you can see, it is a new day. I'm getting ready to film another video, and I completely forgot that I wanted to share with you guys an unboxing, something that I got. As you know, In previous months, I was gifted a copy of No Heart for a Thief by James Lloyd, which is now up for the Spiffbo Awards. And the new sequel is coming out later this month, and James Lloyd was so kind to include me in receiving an ARC of his book. So without further ado, I wanted to unbox it with you guys and see how it goes. So one of the things I love is that when he sends out his ARCs, they all come in this really beautiful little packaging from the publisher. And sometimes I feel so bad about like taking this apart because it's so nice. And there we are. We have No Safe Haven Book 2 in the Molotov series. One of the things I love, like even though this one is a much more menacing kind of cover than the first one, I love the color schemes that he chooses because they're just like almost watercolory to some extent when you see them. Let me see if I have, yeah, right there. Just like, they're very beautifully illustrated covers. So now that I have this, I am super excited to get to the next one. And as I open it up, we have another bookmark for No Heart for a Thief. I got this in the first one, but still these are such pretty bookmarks. I love it. I've been saving one in my book, so now I have another one that I can actually use when I read. So I'm super excited about that. And it looks like they gave you a book plate that is signed by James Lloyd. Very interesting artwork. I don't know if this is going to be something that comes up in the book or not. And he wrote a nice little message to me. So this is wonderful. I can't wait to read this. I was probably going to bump this up on my October TBR and try to read this before it comes out and let you know my thoughts, but I'm super excited to read it. So James Lloyd, thank you for sending me this, and thank you for including me in your pre-reviews of your copies. And I'm loving the Molotov series, and I can't wait to get started on this one. Thank you. And with that being said, I hope your spooky season continues well, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye.